Step into the quiet heart of a home without chandeliers or marble floors. No echoes of grand feasts. Only the crackle of a hearth, the scent of straw, and walls that have absorbed centuries of whispered lives. In this video, we'll step through the low doorway of an ordinary medieval family house and uncover what its humble rooms can still reveal about the people who once called it home. From the outside, such a house made no attempt to impress strangers. It simply sought to survive the seasons. Across England and much of Europe, rural homes shared a similar shape, a modest rectangle, steeply sloped roof, and walls that seemed to breathe with the weather. Many were timber-framed, their skeletons of oak beams exposed against pale panels of wattle and daub, a mix of woven sticks coated in clay, straw, and dung. In regions rich in stone, rough, uneven blocks were mortared together with lime, patched with whatever materials could be found. The Bayeux tapestry, stitched nearly 1,000 years ago, gives us an early glimpse. Small houses with center doors, no visible glass windows, and sharply pitched roofs designed to shed constant rain. These roofs, often thatched with reeds or straw, gleamed gold in summer but darkened to a weathered gray in winter. To medieval eyes, such homes were not poor, they were simply ordinary. Comfort was measured not in luxury, but in protection from wind and rain. A roof that held, walls that stood, and a hearth that could keep the fire alive through the night were worth more than carved stone or iron gates. Passing travelers might have seen these houses as plain, yet for those who lived within, every beam and wall carried the weight of family history, inherited from parents and passed to children. First impressions were practical ones. Does the roof leak? Do the walls block the draft? Is the door strong enough to keep out the animals? Beauty was quiet and unspoken, found in the rhythm of the beams, the scent of fresh plaster, and the dignity of something built by one's own hands. Step closer, and you'll see how the frame defines the face of the house. In a half-timbered home, the beams were never hidden. They were its bones, dark and visible, holding the structure together. Between them, the panels of wattle and daub or plaster formed lighter patches, giving the walls a quilted look born from both necessity and skill. Oak beams were hand-cut, shaped, and joined with wooden pegs, no nails required. The walls were plastered, sometimes whitewashed to brighten the space against long, dim winters. In wealthier towns, owners might carve or paint the beams, turning function into quiet art. Manuscripts like the Book of Love from the mid-15th century show small wooden windows set into these walls, no larger than a loaf of bread. They swung open on hinges, or in poorer homes, were sealed with simple wooden shutters. Glass was rare and costly. Most families relied on thin panes of horn or oilcloth to let in a soft, milky glow while keeping out the chill. Entering such a home meant ducking beneath a low lintel. The doorways were narrow, framed in heavy wood, and the thresholds worn smooth by generations of feet. Inside, the beams weren't just supports, they divided the space, held lofts, and provided hooks for hanging tools, herbs, or clothes drying by the fire. This building style was more than mere construction. It was a statement of identity. The half-timbered house quietly declared, "I have enough to stand firm, but not so much that I live in stone." It stood between poverty and privilege, a home built to endure both storms and memory. From afar, a thatched roof could appear almost idyllic, its warm, straw-colored slope rising above the hedgerows and catching the low sun like spun gold. Yet that beauty was born of necessity, not luxury. Thatch was everywhere because it was cheap, light, and easy to work with. Reeds, straw, or even heather could be gathered from nearby fields, tied in bundles, and laid thickly to keep out wind and rain. Its insulation was remarkable, cool in summer, warm in winter, and breathable enough to let moisture escape. But the same softness that kept families comfortable also required constant care. Over time, rain and frost darkened the roof, flattening the straw until it sagged. Birds and mice found it ideal for nesting, pulling away fibers for their own homes. A neglected thatch could rot within years, and replacing it was a demanding job. Skilled thatchers stripped, layered, and bound new bundles so water would slide off instead of seeping through. Fire was the ever-present danger. A single spark from the hearth could leap to the eaves, and in dry weather, flames might sweep across the thatch faster than any bucket line could contain them. Many medieval towns imposed rules about chimney height and the spacing of houses to lessen this risk, but in crowded villages, one burning roof could doom an entire row. The manuscript La Mortificon de Vainglories from the 15th century shows roofs worn thin, plaster crumbling from walls, and wooden repairs nailed unevenly in place, a reminder that maintenance was an endless struggle. The thatched roof was not just part of the medieval home. It was its crown and its curse, a symbol of how beauty and fragility often shared the same frame. Step over the threshold, and you enter a single open space, a room that served as kitchen, workshop, dining hall, and bedroom all at once. This was the open hall layout, the heart of most medieval homes before chimneys and upper floors became common. Life unfolded here without partitions. The hearth, often set against one wall, sent smoke curling upward through a hole in the roof or a narrow vent. Without a chimney, it drifted slowly through the air, blackening beams and stinging eyes, yet it also preserved the timber, keeping it dry and discouraging insect from infesting stored food. In the Trace Riches Ars and other illuminated manuscripts, we see scenes of domestic life. Clothes hanging from pegs, cooking pots suspended from iron hooks, wooden stools clustered near the fire. Every inch of wall space was used, herbs left to dry, baskets holding tools, shelves supporting the few treasure possessions a family owned. Privacy barely existed. Children played underfoot while chickens, and sometimes even goats, might be brought inside during cold or stormy weather. Sleeping mats were rolled up by day to make room for work, and large chests doubled as seats. The open hall fostered closeness, but also constant noise and motion. Work never stopped. The same table might hold dough at dawn, mending at midday, and supper by dusk. In a world without corridors or doors, the open hall was more than a layout. It was a reflection of life itself. Everyone's presence was shared, everyone's voice heard, and together they formed the living heart of the home. In a medieval peasant's dwelling, light itself was a luxury, measured in mere inches. Windows, if they existed at all, were tiny, often no larger than a man's handspan, framed in wood and set deep into the wall. In poorer homes, there were little more than open shutters that could be closed against rain or wind. Wealthier families might stretch to cover them with thinly scraped panes of horn or oiled cloth that allowed a soft, milky light to filter through. True glass windows, made of small diamond-shaped pieces joined by strips of lead, were rare luxuries reserved for manor houses and churches. Most daylight entered through the open doorway or the flickering hearth. On winter mornings, this meant that rooms stayed in shadow, walls fading into darkness, and the air thick with the mingled scent of wood smoke, drying herbs, and the damp earth of a packed floor. Ventilation was minimal. A louvered vent in the roof or a small opening high on the wall might release smoke, but drafts were inevitable. In summer, the breeze could be a blessing. In winter, it was a thief stealing warmth from the fire. Light was precious enough to dictate the rhythm of life. Tasks that required keen sight, sewing, carving, mending, were done near the doorway while daylight lasted. As dusk fell, activity gathered around the hearth, illuminated by the fire's glow and, in wealthier homes, by the steady flame of tallow candles or oil lamps. Even in shadow, wealth revealed itself. In richer houses, brass or pewter gleamed, scattering the firelight. In poorer ones, darkness clung tightly, broken only by the red pulse of the coals. The hearth was more than a place for cooking. It was the heart of life itself. Each day began and ended here, with the fire smoldering at its core. Set against a wall, or, in older layouts, in the very center of the open hall, it offered warmth, light, and safety in a world where winter could take lives. Cooking was done in iron pots hung from hooks or balanced on tripods above the flames. Long-handled ladles and wooden spoons rested nearby. A simple iron spit turned meat, and a flat griddle baked oat cakes. Bellows waited to wake the embers, and kindling lay close at hand. The Hours of Catherine of Cleves depicts such a scene vividly. A kettle over the fire, a wooden tub beside it, shelves of pottery, and a simple chair drawn close to the warmth. Plastered walls helped reflect the glow, and the smoke-blackened beams above told of countless fires that had never truly gone out. Yet the hearth was also a gathering place. On cold nights, the family drew together to talk, mend tools, and share food. In its glow, faces softened, and the day's worries melted into small, familiar rituals, stirring the pot, turning the spit, banking the coals before bed. Its position within the house revealed its importance. In a world without central heating, the hearth defined where one could work, sit, or sleep. It marked the invisible boundary of comfort. To lose the fire was to lose the home's heartbeat, so it was guarded like a living thing, fed, watched, and passed down from one generation to the next. In a medieval peasant's home, there was no separate bedroom. The bedroom was simply the corner where the bed lay. For the poor, that meant straw sacks or wool-stuffed mattresses rolled out near the hearth to share its warmth through the night. The wealthy, by contrast, might sleep in raised, curtained bed frames that kept out damp and pests, their posts carved, their bedding layered with linen and wool. Most families slept communally, parents and children together, or older ones in a loft beneath the roof while the youngest stayed closest to the fire's glow. Privacy was minimal, and the warmth of bodies mattered more than the separation of space. In winter, people often slept fully clothed, with hats or hoods pulled low to keep in the heat. Bedding reflected status. Wealthier families lay on feather-filled mattresses with dyed blankets, while poorer ones relied on coarse wool or animal skins for cover. Bed frames, if they existed, often doubled as storage, with chests at the foot holding clothing, tools, or valuables. Beds were not only for rest. They were places where infants were nursed, stories were told, and sometimes even business was conducted with visiting neighbors. The bed was a private comfort in a public room, a space where the day's labor ended and the night's quiet began, a reminder that in the medieval world, intimacy and necessity existed side by side. Furniture in a medieval home was few in number and plain in form, built for endurance rather than display. Essentials included a sturdy table for meals and work, simple benches or stools for sitting, and one or two chests for storage. In wealthier homes, a table might be draped with a linen cloth and set with pewter plates, ceramic pitchers, and the occasional glass vessel. A high-backed chair, often reserved for the master of the house, was a mark of authority, while others sat on backless stools. Storage was precious. Wooden chests, heavy and lockable, kept belongings safe while doubling as seats. Shelves might be built into the walls to hold pottery, candles, or tools. Woven baskets made of willow or reeds served countless purposes, from carrying vegetables to holding spun wool. In richer homes, furniture might be painted or carved with decorative motifs, softened with colorful cushions. The poor had no such adornments. Their furniture was rough, planks joined with nails or pegs, polished smooth only by long use. Every item had to earn its place. A table for eating, working, and sometimes even sleeping. A chest for storing clothes in summer or grain in winter. Space was too precious for anything to stand idle. Each piece of furniture told the story of its owners. The chair where a mother nursed her child. The chest a bride carried to her husband's house. The table around which generations shared bread. In a world without excess, these were not mere possessions but trusted companions, shaped by hands and memory alike. A medieval home was never just a dwelling. It was a workshop of survival. The tools within were lifelines, each one bound to a skill that sustained the family. In one corner stood a spinning wheel, its wooden frame polished by years of touch, beside a distaff and bundles of soft, carded wool. If a family could afford one, a loom would often dominate the living space with its tall frame, where the slow rhythm of weaving turned thread into cloth for garments and blankets beneath skilled hands. The men's tools were typically for woodwork and repair: axes, adzes, and saws hanging along the walls, always within reach to mend fences, shape beams, or fix carts. Knives were used everywhere, from the kitchen to the fields, serving countless purposes. In wealthier homes, tools were kept carefully to prevent rust, while in poorer households, they hung in easy reach, worn and patched, but dependable. Cooking implements were just as essential: iron pots and pans, wooden ladles, and griddles ready near the hearth. Mortars and sieves were used for grinding herbs, spices, and separating grain from chaff. Illuminated manuscripts often depict biblical figures like Mary spinning thread or Joseph carving wood, reminders that medieval people saw work as both sacred and ordinary, a reflection of dignity through labor. In this way, the home functioned as a miniature workshop, producing what was needed for survival and sometimes for trade. Every tool told a story of who labored there, what they crafted, and how they endured from season to season. Looking at the details, the low doorway, smoky rafters, curtained bed, and treasured tools, we begin to see that a medieval home was far more than shelter. It was a living portrait of a family's identity, values, and endurance. Poverty and comfort both revealed themselves in materials. Smaller windows, thinner thatch, and meager possessions spoke of hardship, while a tidy floor, neatly packed walls, and herbs drying overhead showed pride, even in simplicity. Better-off peasants expressed quiet prosperity through subtle luxuries: a glazed jug, a feather-stuffed pillow, a pane of leaded glass that caught the morning sun. Archaeology and manuscripts together challenge the old notion that all peasants lived in mud huts. By the 15th century, many homes reached a modest comfort beyond mere survival, with sturdier materials, multiple tables, or purely decorative items. Yet regardless of wealth, each home shared the same purpose: to preserve warmth, nourishment, and life itself. These dwellings were both fortresses against the cold and stages for the human story: births, meals, quarrels, and reconciliations. Fragile though they seemed beside stone castles, they held the heartbeat of medieval life. Each wall absorbed years of labor and love, and their remains still whisper what mattered most. The worth of a home lay not in its walls, but in the lives within them. When I look at these homes, I don't just see timber and thatch. I see an age still breathing. Castles may endure in stone, but true medieval life lived and died in these humble, smoky rooms. Every worn bench, every patched roof, speaks more truth about the Middle Ages than any gilded hall. If you want to keep uncovering these hidden corners of history, subscribe to Banner and Battlement, where the past still breathes.